The Lockheed XP-49 is one of aviation history's great mysteries, a plane built with incredible strength, yet unable to prove itself in combat. It was meant to be a more powerful version of the successful P-38 Lightning, designed to be faster, deadlier, and have a longer range. Equipped with experimental Pratt and Whitney X-1800 engines, it had the potential to change the course of aerial warfare. But instead of becoming a revolutionary fighter, the XP-49 was held back by technical challenges, shifting wartime needs, and the rapid evolution of aircraft technology. It wasn't that the XP-49 was poorly designed, it was simply a victim of bad timing. It had too much power, too much complexity, and in the end, no real chance to make a difference. The XP-49 is a perfect example of how military technology must balance innovation with practicality to be truly effective. Aviation history is filled with aircraft that could have been legendary but never had the chance to shine. The Lockheed XP-49 is one of them, a fighter designed to outclass its predecessor but ultimately defeated by the very qualities meant to make it superior. What happens when a plane is too advanced for its own good? When it reaches the peak of piston engine performance, but is already outdated before it ever sees battle? The XP-49 forces us to consider these questions, showing that raw power isn't always the key to success. The XP-49's downfall highlights a common mistake in military aviation, focusing on small improvements when a major breakthrough is already changing the game. Lockheed was building a stronger, more advanced twin-boom fighter, but at the same time, jet engines were taking over the skies. The XP-49 was an incredible achievement for piston-engine aircraft, but it arrived at a moment when the future of aviation was moving in a completely different direction. It wasn't weakness that doomed the XP-49, but rather excess too much weight, too much complexity, and too much belief in a design that had already reached its limits. The XP-49 project began as part of the U.S. Army Air Corps' effort to create an advanced fighter based on the P-38's innovative twin-boom design. Lockheed proposed the XP-49 as an improved version, featuring stronger engines, better aerodynamics, and upgraded weapons. The initial design changes were modest, but the real game-changer was the planned use of two Pratt and Whitney X-1800 engines, each expected to deliver 2,300 horsepower. These engines were meant to give the XP-49 superior speed and altitude performance compared to the P-38. In 1939, Lockheed was awarded a contract to build the prototype, with the first flight scheduled for early 1942. However, the development process was plagued by delays. The X-1800 engines were not ready, and the Army ordered Lockheed to switch to Continental 1440-9/11 engines, each producing 1,600 horsepower. This change significantly reduced the aircraft's expected performance, turning what was meant to be a next-generation fighter into an incremental improvement over the P-38. At first glance, the XP-49 looked very similar to the P-38 Lightning. It retained the twin-boom configuration, central fuselage pod, and tricycle landing gear. However, Lockheed made several refinements to improve its aerodynamics and overall efficiency. The XP-49 had a longer fuselage, increased wingspan, and larger control surfaces to enhance stability. The aircraft was also equipped with a pressurized cockpit, making it one of the first American fighters to incorporate this feature, a critical advantage for high-altitude operations. The XP-49's armament was another area of improvement. The original plan included two 20mm cannons and 4.50 caliber machine guns, making it more heavily armed than the standard P-38. However, due to weight concerns and engine limitations, the final prototype carried only one 20mm cannon and 4.50 caliber machine guns, reducing its intended firepower. The XP-49's maiden flight took place on November 11, 1942, more than a year behind schedule. Test flights revealed that while the aircraft handled well, its performance was underwhelming. The expected speed advantage over the P-38 was minimal, with a top speed of around 409 miles per hour, barely faster than the P-38J, which was already in production. The Continental 1440 engines also proved unreliable. They lacked the necessary power for the XP-49 to reach its intended top speed and suffered from overheating issues. This made the XP-49 an impractical option for combat deployment, as the Army sought aircraft with superior high-altitude performance and better engine reliability. By the time the XP-49 was undergoing testing, the landscape of military aviation was changing rapidly. The U.S. Army Air Forces were increasingly focused on high-speed, high-altitude fighters that could challenge enemy aircraft over Europe and the Pacific. The P-38 had proven effective in these roles, but newer designs like the P-51 Mustang and the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt were emerging with better overall performance and operational reliability. Another major shift was the development of jet propulsion. The XP-49 was conceived at a time when piston engine fighters were the dominant force in aerial combat. But by the early 1940s, jet engines were beginning to reshape the future of air warfare. The Bell P-59 era Comet, the first American jet fighter, was already in development, signaling a move away from piston-powered designs like the XP-49. Several factors contributed to the XP-49's failure. The switch from the X-1800 engines to the weaker Continental 1430 engines significantly reduced the XP-49's potential. These engines were not only less powerful, but also unreliable, leading to performance shortfalls and maintenance concerns. Compared to the latest P-38 variants, the XP-49 offered little advantage. Its speed, range, and firepower did not justify the investment required for mass production. The rapid development of jet aircraft and improved piston engine fighters made the XP-49 obsolete before it could prove itself in combat. With World War II in full swing, the military prioritized fighters that could be quickly deployed and easily maintained. The XP-49 did not fit this requirement. With no compelling reason to continue the project, the U.S., the Army canceled further development of the XP-49 in mid-1943. The prototype was briefly used for additional testing, but was eventually scrapped. Lockheed had already begun working on more promising aircraft, including the P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. Although the XP-49 never saw combat, its development provided valuable lessons for Lockheed and the U.S. military. The experience with pressurized cockpits, high-altitude performance, and advanced aerodynamics influenced later aircraft designs. The P-38 Lightning remained a crucial fighter throughout the war, while Lockheed's focus shifted toward the emerging jet age. One aspect often overlooked in discussions about the Lockheed XP-49 is its intended role as a high-altitude interceptor. While much of its design borrowed from the P-38 Lightning, the XP-49 was meant to operate at greater altitudes, engaging enemy bombers and reconnaissance aircraft where standard fighters struggled. During the late 1930s and early 1940s, the U.S. The Army Air Corps anticipated a growing need for high-altitude defense. The rapid advancements in pressurized bombers, such as the German Junkers Ju-86P and later high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft, pushed military planners to explore fighters capable of meeting these threats at 40,000 feet or higher. The XP-49's more powerful engines and turbocharging systems were meant to give it a performance edge at these elevations. However, This capability also introduced engineering challenges. The XP-49's airframe had to endure extreme temperature fluctuations, reduced atmospheric pressure, and performance inefficiencies due to thinner air. Turbocharging technology, still in its infancy, often proved unreliable at higher altitudes. Unlike the P-38, which saw modifications to improve high-altitude performance over time, the XP-49 never had a chance to work through these refinements. This also highlights another issue. The XP-49 was a solution to a problem that was evolving faster than the aircraft itself. By the time it reached testing, strategic bombing doctrine was shifting. The U.S. was placing greater emphasis on long-range escort fighters, such as the P-51 Mustang, rather than interceptors meant to climb rapidly and engage bombers over home territory. The XP-49, designed for a battlefield that was quickly disappearing, lost its purpose before it ever had a chance to prove itself. Had the XP-49 succeeded, it might have become a specialized high-altitude defender. But history had other plans, proving that even the most ambitious aircraft can be victims of strategic shifts and technological leaps. Despite its failure, the XP-49 remains an interesting chapter in aviation history. It serves as an example of how technological ambition can sometimes outpace practical military needs. The aircraft's pressurized cockpit was ahead of its time, and its twin-boom design continued to influence later aircraft. However, its story is ultimately one of missed opportunities. A plane that had the potential to be great, but was undone by circumstances beyond its control. The XP-49 is a reminder that military aircraft development is not just about raw power or innovation. Timing, practicality, and adaptability play equally crucial roles. In this case, an aircraft designed to be superior to its predecessor ended up being just an evolutionary dead end. While the P-38 Lightning became one of the most iconic fighters of World War II, the XP-49 faded into obscurity, remembered only as an ambitious but ill-fated experiment. The Lockheed XP-49 was a plane that had too much strength on paper but lacked the right conditions to succeed. It was designed with high expectations, incorporating advanced features and ambitious performance goals. Yet, it arrived at a time when the military was moving in a different direction, both technologically and strategically. Its story is not just about an aircraft that failed, it is about the broader challenges of military aviation development. The XP-49 highlights the risks of incremental improvements in an era of rapid technological change. While it never became a frontline fighter, it remains an intriguing case study in the evolution of military aircraft, demonstrating how even the most promising designs can be rendered obsolete by shifting priorities and unforeseen challenges.